Good afternoon, St. Francis. Jane Porcelli here. Happy Wednesday. Thank you for coming to join us on this celebration of the feast of St. John the Baptist. Let's take a moment to center ourselves and to remember that we are already in God's presence.
A reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. Hear me, O coastlands. Listen, O distant peoples. The Lord called me from birth. From my mother's womb, he gave me my name. He made of me a sharp-edged sword and concealed me in the shadow of his arm. He made me a polished arrow. In his quiver he hid me. You are my servant, he said to me, Israel, through whom I show my glory. Though I thought I had toiled in vain, and for nothing uselessly spent my strength, yet my reward is with the Lord. My recompense is with God. For now, the Lord has spoken, who formed me as his servant from the womb, that Jacob may be brought back to him, and Israel gathered to him. And I am made glorious in the sight of the Lord, and my God is now my strength. It is too little, he says, for you to be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and restore the survivors of Israel. I will make you a light to the nations, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. The word of the Lord.
I will praise thee. I will praise thee. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I will praise thee. I will praise thee. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Oh Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my sitting down and my uprising. Thou understandest my thought far off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. I will praise thee. I will praise thee. For I holy name. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Shalt be called the prophet of the highest, for thou shalt go before the face of the Lord to prepare his ways. Oh, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. When the time arrived for Elizabeth to have her child, she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown his great mercy toward her, and they rejoiced with her. When they came on the 8th day to circumcise the child, they were going to call him Zechariah, after his father. But his mother said in reply, "No, he will be called John." But they answered her, "There is no one among your relatives who has this name." So they made signs asking his father what he wished the child to be called. He asked for a tablet and wrote, "John is his name." And they were all amazed. Immediately his mouth was opened, his tongue freed, and he spoke, blessing God. Then fear came upon all their neighbors, and all these matters were discussed throughout the hill country of Judea. All who heard these things took them to heart, saying, "What then will this child be?" For surely the hand of the Lord was with him. The child grew and became strong in spirit, and he was in the desert until the day of his manifestation to Israel. The Gospel of the Lord. It is often said that our cousins are our first best friends. I know that has certainly been true for me. John, Michael, and Jim are my older cousins, closest to me in age, and I adore them. I always have, I always will. Probably better than I would have loved brothers if I had had them. They taunt me, they tease me, they laugh with me, they comfort me, they encourage and support me, and I hope I do the same for them. Today's feast is all about John the Baptist, Jesus' older cousin. We know a lot about John. We know his birth was a miracle because his parents were older, past childbearing age. We can presume that his childhood was sometimes a bit out of the ordinary, as in the story we hear of his naming today. We know he grew to be a rather religious man who searched out an extraordinary way to follow God. We know he had unusual taste in clothing and diet. We know that because of his deep and faithful relationship with God, he gradually came to understand the truth of who his little cousin was, the promised Messiah for Israel. And we know that once he learned who Jesus was, nothing was going to stop him from proclaiming that good news. He would love his cousin to the end and die for him. And so we ask ourselves today, what does this feast of John the Baptist have to say to us in our present reality? These are the two questions I find myself reflecting on. Who are the prophets that we're listening to today? And when am I being called to be prophetic? I find both these questions rather difficult, if not scary. If we know anything about the prophets, we know that they were not welcome in their own town. While today we revere the words of the prophets, we know that while they were alive, their lives were not easy. We are living in difficult times, and these are exactly the days that call for prophetic voices. For the last 3 to 6 months, really, we've been living in the shadow of fear as a virus changed our way of life. And just as we've begun to acclimate ourselves to this new reality, the very old and very ugly sin of racism has invaded our collective consciousness in a new and horrific way. As faithful people who say we believe in social justice and in the equality of all people, we are forced to confront our own sinfulness, our blindness, our weak human nature. Prophetic voices all around us are calling us out, demanding that we look honestly at ourselves, both individually and as a society. On this feast of John the Baptist, how can we ignore these prophets? Even more intimidating is the thought that God may be asking us to be that prophetic voice within our own families or our circle of friends. In our polite society, we are taught that we should not discuss faith, finances, or politics at the family dinner table. That polite conversation is what has maintained the status quo for longer than it should have ever lasted. It is time for the prophetic voice in each of us to find the courage to have the conversation at the picnic table about what's going on in our society. It doesn't matter if we're scared. It has to be done. But let me say, if you're really at a loss for how to open this conversation, try this. Ask one of the younger persons in your group, ideally a recent college graduate, what they think of the present world situation, and then stand back and have the humility to listen and perhaps learn something from their point of view. Oh my goodness, our younger sisters and brothers are indeed the prophetic voice that our world so desperately needs at this moment. So on this feast of John the Baptist, I believe we have two choices put before us. We can either be the prophetic voice that our world needs right now, or we can find, listen to, and follow the prophet's voice that we hear in our midst. Which will you choose?